Welcome back. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says compromise and trade-offs will be needed to achieve the goals set out in last week's budget. President Ramaphosa says the plan presented by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni will contain spending, increase revenue and encourage economic growth while helping rein in precarious and unsustainable state debt. According to the president, now containing the public sector wage bill is critical to stabilizing state finances. The practice lead Sub-Saharan Africa for Frontier Strategy Group, Dr. Frontier William Atwell, joins us now to drill down on South Africa's economy budget. It's good to see you. Now, South Africa's 2020 budget shows increased funding for healthcare, but real cuts elsewhere. What parts of the budget were affected by these cuts and what's the impact on the economy?
So the biggest area for reducing expenditure is really the public sector wage bill, which is, of course, extremely contentious given that there is a multi-year wage agreement in place. So the government is essentially proposing that agreement is opened up for negotiation. However, the trade unions have said that they are not willing to do this. So there is a big fight coming, and we expect some disruption, potentially strikes even, as talks between the government and trade unions representing the public sector get underway.
All right, William, the budget also reveals public finances are even worse in states than previously thought. Can you tell us more about this?
So public finances in quite a dire state, it must be said. Compared to the finance minister's midterm budget statement, which is the announcement he makes in October every year, compared to last year's October statement, revenues have underperformed yet again. And this is really due to personal income taxes underperforming, tax receipts from corporate taxation also underperforming. So we see there's a widening deficit between what the government is spending and what they're bringing in terms of tax revenue. And this is really being made up through more borrowing. So we're finding the debt burden really continues to escalate. And of course, this looks very concerning to the sovereign credit rating agencies, notably Moody's, which is due to make its decision on South Africa's rating in the coming days and weeks.
Minor tax changes were included in the budget, and there was an absence of a VAT increase or other tax hikes. How does the government plan to reduce its deficit in years to come?
This is a really important point. There was quite an interesting take on the tax question. South African analysts and watchers have been used to seeing regular tax increases on a fairly consistent basis. But here, actually, the finance minister was pointing towards the limited scope for this. So actually suggesting there may be business tax reductions in the coming year, potentially. And certainly some tax relief for households as well. There were some minor increases when it came to fuel taxes, for instance, taxes on alcohol and cigarettes. But in general, the move wasn't to hike taxes fundamentally, really realizing that doing this too aggressively would harm growth at the end of the day.
Well, everyone is waiting as Moody's is expected to announce a review of assessment of South Africa this month. Is the ratings agency likely to downgrade the country's status to junk?
This is looking very likely now, certainly given just how quickly debt servicing is growing as a proportion of the overall budget, as a percentage of GDP as well. The numbers are not looking good. And so it's really looking pretty much a certainty that Moody's would downgrade the sovereign external debt to junk status, which would bring it in line, of course, with the other major rating agencies. So certainly we're expecting quite a bit more volatility when it comes to the currency in the coming days and weeks as that decision comes through.
William, tell us your expectations as South Africa's GDP numbers will be released tomorrow.
Yeah, so the GDP numbers for Q4, as you said, coming out tomorrow, and they are unlikely to look very healthy. Many analysts are talking about a small contraction. And certainly when we look at the high frequency data coming out for important sectors like mining and manufacturing, retail sales also took a dip at the end of the year, really not pointing to growth. We don't expect the economy to have contracted overall over the course of 2019, but certainly another small contraction in Q4 looks very likely indeed.
The practice leads Sub-Saharan Africa at Dhaka Frontier, William Otwell. Thanks for speaking with us.
Pleasure.
Let's turn now to Egypt, which has introduced exceptional measures to make it easier for listed companies to buy treasury stocks in order to support the stock market following a sharp fall in the world markets in the past few days. Under the new rules announced by the financial regulator, companies will be temporarily allowed to notify the stock exchange on the day they plan to purchase treasury stocks instead of having to give 3 days' notice. This comes in light of the latest events and developments that the global financial markets have faced and the wave of sharp declines that Arab and foreign exchanges have witnessed. Egypt has built a pilot 3.6 billion Egyptian pound model industrial park for furniture near the Nile Delta of the Meta, but it may face an uphill battle of luring away craftsmen from traditional workshops in the old city. The project aims to boost economic growth and create jobs in a country where about a third of the 100 million people live in poverty. Do look at this.
Egypt has built a multi-billion-pound furniture city near the mouth of the Nile, a pilot for a series of industry mega hubs it wants to throw up across the nation, but it could face a struggle to populate it. The aim of the £3.6 billion project and the other planned specialized parks is to boost economic growth and create jobs badly needed in a country where about a third of the 100 million people live in poverty.
The idea for the city came about after the presidency and the government's initiative to rely more on local production and decrease reliance on imports while also increasing exports to international markets. So the government began to focus its attention on areas with industrial clusters such as the Dineta Furniture City and the Robiki City, which manufactures leather.
However, only 400 of the 1,400 newly built workshops have been sold so far.
You've seen our neighborhood here. Our houses are above our workshops. There is not a worker among us who will go to that city over there. They should have first come and consulted the people here, the craftsmen, those who understand what the work will be like. But they made a workshop that is 50 square kilometers. How am I supposed to employ 30 craftsmen inside that space?
The head of the furniture division at Damieta's Chamber of Commerce, Salama Al-Ghor, pointed out that it was still early days. He said the new city hoped to sell the remaining 1,000 workshops over the next 2 years and predicted the city would create 100,000 jobs within 4 years.
Those who suffer today are the smaller businesses, the ones who make everything with their own hands. These are the ones who need attention in the coming period. We need to know how to develop them, how to make use of the added value they put into their products. They produce items that are unique around the world.
The furniture industry has been in decline for some 20 or 30 years, hit by changing taste and cheaper imports from Turkey and China, as well as a depressed consumer spending.
And that's our program today. Thank you for watching. I am BC Adebayo.